Welcome back to another episode of the Can I Tell You Something podcast.
Yeah.
Today, we have quite a juicy installment in store. We have two of our very closest friends, Sarah and Emma, that are going to be teaching us all about
gender essentialism.
Exactly. Right on the tip of my tongue.
That had the effect of like when you look up a word for the definition, you press the little mic and it's just like a random voice out of nowhere.
I'm the randomized voice.
Yeah. We're a straight couple and we're going to learn about gender essentialism and have like a discussion because like this isn't as big of a part of our lives because I don't know. Because we're straight.
It's just not something that I think we encounter.
You guys aren't just like discussing gender theory together all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think it does come up in some sneaky ways that we'll probably get into later.
Yeah.
But I do think we have a lot to learn based on our position in society.
Yes.
I think before we get into that, we've got to do some introductions because these two lovely lesbians, as I like to say,
Practicing
lesbians have never been on this show before.
Never.
So chances are anyone who's out there listening doesn't know who you are. So I'm thinking we do a little roundtable intro with a little sneak attack question. This is going to be a yes or a no, by the way.
Okay.
So let's introduce our name, pronouns, and if you like the classic candy cane, the classic peppermint, no bullshit red and white, or you prefer the like candies ones. Do you know what I mean?
Like the little suckers?
No. It's like the candy canes that aren't peppermint flavor.
Oh, like Jolly Rancher.
Exactly. And it's just a which one? I can start us off here.
Okay, go for it.
My name is Claire. I use she, her pronouns. And I like peppermint.
My name is Brendan. I use he, him pronouns. And I also like peppermint.
My name is Sarah. I use they, them pronouns. And I also like the peppermint.
My name's Emma. They, them, or she, her. Hate to say this, but the non-peppermint ones are kind of good on their own. Peppermint ones are for stirring into hot chocolate.
Seems like we have a multi-use case here.
Yeah.
I don't have one answer, and I'm sorry. That was the whole prompt. My bad.
Really
so
upsetting.
now that we have these really great introductions out of the way.
A very vivid portrait of everyone at the table.
Precisely. You know everything that you could possibly need.
Says a lot about us.
Right here, laid out on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into the episode.
Yeah.
So, Sarah is about to take it away. They're about to rustle your jimmies in a way that haven't quite been rustled before. So, without further ado, Sarah.
I want to start off by asking what, I think you guys looked up the Wikipedia, but what is your understanding of what gender essentialism is?
Okay, I looked it up.
Yes.
And I saw this diagram. On one side it's blue, and on one side it's pink.
Yes.
And it's more or less when like stereotypes are like people get put into boxes based off of gendered stereotypes.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly laid out by the pink and blue.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but that was like my quick interpretation.
Yes.
And it seems to obviously mostly affect women in a very negative and harmful way.
Yeah.
I don't know how it affects men or other genders.
Yeah.
Because I very briefly looked this up.
Yes.
But I'm sure it's much deeper than that.
Did you have any ideas of what it was?
Yeah, my in general, it's like it seems like a theory in that there is like an idyllic man and an idyllic woman, like a very like strong binary, and that it explains a lot of social behavior through that binary, saying like that is nature, that is like what is natural, that is XYZ. These are the characteristics of each gender, and they were like, that's it.
it like enforces gender
Yeah.
norms, but more so than that, like strict roles.
hmm
So it's like John cuts the grass, Susie cooks dinner. But
Yes.
from how we understand it on like its most very basic level, it's splitting
Yes.
two genders
Yeah.
and putting them into very, very strict boxes.
That is basically it. Gender essentialism is basically the belief that men and women are two categories of existing, with men being males and women being females. And there is like an essential essence to each category where everyone in that category shares the same essence or like ideologies and like goals and everything. So it's really the consequence of it is exactly what you guys said, which is basically two genders, men and women, being separated. And in our history in Western society, women get like the short stick of it, where women are,
right.
you know, face misogyny like literally every day, all the time. There's this guy named Pope John Paul II. He was active as the Pope from 1978 to 2005. And he didn't invent genders being like separate and having separate roles, but he like really made prominent the like reasoning behind what gender essentialism is. And he didn't coin that term. I believe two philosophers around his time coined it after he kind of like popularized how it functions in society.
So it comes from a movement from the Catholic Church.
Yes, it is a very
Sorry,
Catholic
did you say the
movement.
year again?
1978 to 2005. So it was
So-
popularized
That's
in...
so interesting.
It's very recent as like a salient concept, but like
Right.
roles being differed and separated
hmm
have been around for a long time. But
so
not
it
as
seems
like...
like it was probably a reaction from like the 60s.
It was
and
a
early
reaction
70s.
from the women's
Yeah.
rights movement.
Yeah. That's very deeply concerning.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are quotes from him that I have, and they're absolutely insane. And I'm going to read some of them for you because they
Please.
sound ridiculous to hear them out loud. So this is based on the first chapter of Genesis, and they use Genesis a lot to justify what they're saying, and
Can I real quick
they
hop in
misinterpret
here?
Genesis
Anyone,
heavily.
hot take, maybe not. Anyone who is using Genesis as an explanation or a reasoning for any of their takes deserves like severe punishment.
Can I
And,
get some
like-
clarity on what Genesis talks about? I'm not.
Yeah, it's
I'm
like
not
the
really
first
familiar.
chapter, more or less, of the Bible.
It's
Of
basically
like
saying
Old Testament.
yes, and how
Right.
how many modern day Christians and other people in Catholic branches interpret it as is like Eve being made from the rib of Adam, and that's
Oh.
like, and then like
And that
Yeah.
They
wasn't
sit-
translated
yeah.
correctly. Like there's so many.
there's so many mistranslations.
Yeah.
It is the
There's
way
a
that
woman
people
now
use it
who's
now.
like going back and retranslating like specifically Genesis because it's
Yeah.
so problematic and it's
Yeah.
rooted
No
in like
way.
so
Yeah.
many gender issues.
yeah,
It's wild.
and so that
Oh
so
my
that's
God.
concerning.
So Genesis-
that's where this come from.
yeah.
Wow.
So Genesis, he uses Genesis to justify most things. That
Ugh.
like men and women need to be complementary to each other. Complementarianism is another one. It's that like men and women essentially complement each other. Like the essences of men and women are
Like so opposite.
Is
like
that-
they complement each other perfectly.
God.
So
Is-
that's like finding your other half, like that kind of thing. Like that's where that
Which is
flowery language kind of originates from. There's many other
Yeah.
older stories about finding your other half, but
Right.
like
But that's one.
how people use it
interpretation.
today is like very inspired by complementarianism.
So
so
like
I'm
a
saying
woman
that right.
has to be docile and a husband has to be like very aggressive. Like they can't.
Not even necessarily that. Well, that's part of it, but like just the idea that there's like two halves and they come together and they complement each other perfectly, like their personalities and their beings.
Is that
Mm.
used as justification as to why, like, two women or two men
Yeah,
or to anyone
Yeah.
can't be together because
yeah.
only
They
a
don't
man and
complement
only a
each
woman.
other. Yeah,
should
only a
be
man and
together?
only a woman can complement each other.
Yuck. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
let's hear
that's
from.
icky.
Yeah, let's hear from Pope John Paul II. And this is
Okay.
from a document called The Theology of the Body. And it's one that he wrote. don't remember the date.
That's a
on
hot
it.
title right there.
Wow.
It's
New York Times
actually,
bestseller?
Yeah, it's kind of a dope title. Let me remind myself of when this was written.
It's concerning from Pope, but I feel like a metal band could pull it off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I don't know.
It is, the document itself is transcripts from lectures that he gave.
Mhm.
And those lectures were in the 70s, late 70s, like 1979. And it says, I think in the 80s too, it went into.
So he was the Pope
He was the
while
Pope.
like AIDS crisis was happening too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Wow.
So here's my first quote. And this is from the man himself. He said, "There are two ways of, quote, being a body, and at the same time a man, which complete each other. They are two complementary dimensions of self-consciousness and self-determination, and at the same time, two complementary ways of being conscious of the meaning of the body." So he is saying that there are two ways to be human, and they complement each other. And those are feminine and masculine ways of being. And his justification for that is, I think this was a little further down on the page. Femininity finds itself, in a sense, in the presence of masculinity, while masculinity is confirmed through femininity. So basically that there has to be a feminine person in the relationship and a masculine person. And that, of course, is a man and a woman with essentially feminine and masculine essences.
Essential oils, if you will.
Basically, yeah.
Wow, that is, God, that's really, really concerning.
So
Yes.
we can't be dating.
No,
Two
we're not
masculine
allowed. We're two
lesbians
masculine
cannot.
lesbians.
We're just bros.
We're just friends who live in a 1-bedroom apartment together.
BFFs,
History will
bros,
call them
yeah.
besties.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
The thing that sucks about that, though, is it's not only saying that like two people of the same gender can't be together,
Yeah.
but it's also saying that there's only two genders.
Yeah.
So it's like a deeply,
Yeah.
it's like a really messed up onion. Okay.
Yes.
Those layers are not, I'm not happy with them.
Yeah.
They're making things really complicated in a really, really toxic way.
Yeah.
That is, God, it's so upsetting that this is all rooted in Genesis too. Because
Yeah.
when you said earlier, like Eve is of Adam, like from
Yeah.
his rib, more or
Which
less.
is a very wrong interpretation of how that story
But that's
occurred.
like echoing in that quote you
Yes.
just read. It's almost identical. It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
icky.
And
Yeah.
he further says later in a different lecture, and this is in a little section titled "Man and Woman, a Gift for Each Other." And I can imagine that you're imagining where this is going.
Unfortunately.
This is because in this mutual relationship, with Genesis 2:23 through 25 speaks of, the man and the woman become a gift for each other through the whole truth and evidence of their own body in its masculinity and femininity. It is a question then of an acceptance or welcome that expresses and sustains in mutual nakedness the meaning of the gift.
Is that trying to get at like only a man and a woman can create life?
That too.
Like more like
Yeah, one of Pope John Paul II's things was birth, like reproductive sex.
Yeah.
because that could be a whole other thing, right?
yeah.
Like no one is saying that like a man and a woman can't be together. Right.
No.
And it's like no one's saying that, or it's just like
the consequences of saying it like this are very dangerous, and it becomes very clear when you see how like society already functioned and then how this confirmed a lot of things that were already happening, like in terms of like women's rights, and it just like makes it dangerous for women, basically.
I mean,
to be like, and like the consequences of it we'll get into are, I mean, gross in a lot of ways and just like concerning, but also a little ridiculous at the same time. Like hear it out loud. So
I feel like people used to be a lot more religious. So it's like the Pope's word did have like a lot of weight. It wasn't until partway through our lives that like the Catholic Church as a whole started to get some big cracks poked in it, and it was because of all the like abuse that was going on inside of it.
Yeah.
The word has, I think, a lot more significant of weight than what we think of our Pope today.
Yeah.
So it's like that's where I see it being really like it's much deeper than like exactly what
I
you're
think
saying.
also like politically people hold Catholics and specifically the Vatican
Mhm.
at a
Yeah.
further distance than they did in even like the 70s,
Oh,
80s, 90s.
100%.
Like
Yeah.
in our political climate in 2023, there are so many people on the far right now that like hate our Pope. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
hate Catholicism, they hate the
because
Vatican.
it's like too liberal for them.
Right. It's like the
Which
Pope
is like wild.
crazy.
Pope
too.
Francis is like he's trying to do some minor slays right now. Okay.
He's minutely slaying.
Very,
yeah, and like,
yeah.
but
Very
that
softly.
is
Doing, like,
wild
the
for
bare
the Catholic
minimum,
Church,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So any little bit of like just a little bit of movement and like being slightly
Yeah.
progressive is just too threatening that
Yeah.
people are like not putting any power back
Yeah.
in the Pope. So I think it's really important to say, hey,
Mhm.
this was the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The Pope was kind of like it. Pope was in.
Yeah.
You know? So, the weight was so much
They
stronger.
hear this and they eat this up.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like,
And you can't refute it because the Pope said it, which means God says it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
That's-
The Pope
And, like,
is the
even-
spokesperson of God.
Even if
Mhm.
people didn't like, even if they were like more separated from this ideology directly, like the more and more people who did hear about it and did uphold it just made it worse. And it just like snowballs over time.
He was obviously talking to straight couples, right?
Yes.
So even
Oh,
if
yes.
a woman was hearing these talks or she was in a relationship with a man who was really into these talks,
Yeah.
she had no hope of getting out of that
Yeah.
relationship
Oh, yeah.
because of what the Pope was
Yeah.
actively telling her partner.
Yeah.
And that is the really, really scary part
Yeah.
to me. It's like, even if a woman actively knew and was actively trying to fight
Yeah.
against it, it would have been near to impossible to get out.
And that brings me to my next source, actually, referencing another podcast, but it's called Gender Essentialism Hurts Everyone. That's the title of the episode of the podcast, where they talk about some of the consequences of gender essentialism, some of them being like how it basically made the Bible be able to be used to justify men's like domination over women, and domination meaning many different things. But one of the like ways that that document was interpreted was women are receivers and men are givers. And there's a lot of other implications.
I'm sorry.
But that's
In
basi-
what world are the women the
And
receivers?
let me add on to this. The receiving giving part was anatomical. That was based on
Oh.
anatomy,
So birth.
sex. But there's more to it. Then it also goes on to say that this means that women are always giving in a receiving way and men are always receiving in a giving way. One of the consequences they talk about is how women have little to no access to like leadership roles in many denominations of the church. And so that really upholds gender hierarchy in the church, specifically about men placing their spirituality in control of their husbands. So like men tell them like, oh, I have a message from God for you. Like they can
Oh.
basically control their wives' spirituality. And like by choosing what church they go to and choosing basically what version of the Bible they're told based on that church.
And telling them the interpretation of it.
Yeah, and so
too.
these women are basically using their husbands as like a middleman between God and themselves, which is not how it's said in the Bible. The Bible encourages like direct communication, personal connection between you and God. That basically causes a lot of women to not see their spirituality as something that can be like healing or like good for them, but more like a tool of submission for their husbands.
It makes me think a lot about the Duggars.
Yeah.
And I don't mean
Yeah,
to get
no.
like super off, but
No,
like
that's on.
and I know like IBLP is its own crazy thing.
But that is so heavily rooted in
Yeah.
gender essentialism. It's crazy.
Yeah, that
Or
just
I was
seems
gonna
like
say-
I had to go
essentialism
back
the
and
max.
watch.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like the origin event of a lot of the stuff that we see today, like dating advice books from the 2000s, like
Oh, they're
airport bestsellers.
so
There were
insane.
some that were
gosh.
written by priests,
Yeah.
and it was
They're
advice
crazy.
that they're giving, like because they would do couples counseling. They could
Mm.
play marriage like basically
Well,
marriage
wait,
therapists.
But okay,
yeah,
you know that if you get married in the Catholic Church, that you have to have like a sit down
Mhm.
With-
time
Meeting.
with the priest.
Yes.
And they do counseling. It's weird. They have like little handouts and booklets.
Yep.
My old Christian church would offer free
Yeah.
like
You have to
counseling
wonder
for
what they're
like
saying in those
newly engaged
sessions.
people.
Yeah.
Bring up another interesting factoid that I found researching. In an article called Young Children's Inductiveness Generalizations About Social Categories, When is Gender Essential? By Pillow et al. Actual last name is Pillow, and I'm so they did a whole study on when children recognize gender stereotypes and when they like kind of can cognitively like pick out stereotypes. And they found that at 3 years old, they had a grasp on different stereotypes. And the ages were 3 to 5, and the 5-year-old had like a stronger, more succinct grasp on it and understood it. So I was just wondering, when did you guys start?
Oh, wow. Okay. I would say probably 5.
Yeah.
But also, I don't remember who I was at 3. Right? Wish I could,
that's
but
true. Yeah.
I remember like in my kindergarten classroom, we had these like plastic food toys, like where you like build your burger, build your sandwich. And I remember like always playing kitchen, always playing like mom or whatever. But like only the little girls did that.
Yeah.
Like then the boys were like playing with their trucks and their Legos and doing the cool shit, right? And I don't remember having a problem with it. Like I wanted to be making little burgers, right? But I knew that there was something separating us.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I didn't know the severity of it.
Yeah.
But I could recognize that very, very easily and didn't question it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't unhappy because I was 5.
Yeah.
Right? I was happy to make my burgers. Now at 22, I'm really unhappy about it. Like, grew up, realized not so great.
Yeah.
But it is really interesting. When you said 3, that didn't even surprise me.
Yeah.
Because if we look at children's toys, I mean, it starts literally...
Not to mention it again, but I used to work in a toy store.
Dang.
Not to mention it again.
Literally an industry expert now.
I'm sure you saw a lot of that. Like,
parents would choose their ribbon color for like the gift wrapping, and they would say like boy colors or girl colors. And obviously I knew what they meant, and I would still question them on it because I wanted to make them a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's
because I thought it was a little funny to see like a grandma being like, blue, it's boy colors. Shut up.
Or is it aquamarine?
Yeah, like what shade?
What do you know?
And so I'd always ask them like, what's the child's favorite color? Like, just tell me the favorite color. And if it's a 3-year-old, I'll make it rainbow. Like, it's 3. Like, what? It's 3. It's literally an infant.
Like, colors are pretty special at this point.
They're still trying to learn them.
They
Might as well give them as many as possible.
They just discovered they have eyes.
Right.
I will say it's an injustice that, first of all, girl colors got regulated to just pink and purple. That's a pretty narrow band.
That's not a lot of options
for visual light.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about that.
Yeah.
Secondly, like men took too much.
With your blue and green. Oh, you get red. You get orange.
We get yellow, and it's like it's stupid how much stuff men get.
See, I feel like yellow's kind of in the middle.
Yellow's neutral.
Yellow's
some shades
ground
of
for
green
sure.
are neutral.
Right.
Yes.
But then there's like adult colors too.
Wait, what? Okay.
I'm gonna say that like as I discovered my sexuality more, my favorite color moved from like the pink to the purple to the yellow to the green. Like that honestly seems just like a scale because I was like, I'm not like other girls. I like purple. Like that made me special for a second, and then like 2 years later, I'm like, and I'm bisexual. And then like time passes, I'm like, I can appreciate yellow for what it is. And then suddenly I'm a lesbian. Like it's like spot on. My understanding of colors just like expanded along with my idea of gender. And maybe because it's drilled in me. It's like, you're pink, you're girl. I was 5 and I had like a pink day to school. What does that even mean? I wore like a pink beret, pink Crocs, pink shoes, pink shorts, all of it.
That's so fashionable.
Because I was like, I'm girl. I'm Miss
It's me, girl.
I'm showing up at kindergarten in all pink to let everyone know. Then suddenly I'm in high school wearing all black, and then I'm in college wearing mustard yellow.
Emo. You're wearing mustard yellow.
More of a burnt orange.
Sorry.
That's where I'm at right now. That's more masculine lesbian, I guess, is burnt orange and forest green. Because you're wearing
maybe in 2023. That's a dig on Pacific Northwest gay people.
I feel like I have just experienced a whole transformation because I'm over here in pink.
Yeah,
I never
that's a
loved
she
it.
her top right
Yeah,
there.
like this is a she her. For those who obviously can't see me, no one can see me but me.
It's pink.
It's pink.
We can confirm.
Yeah. I want to know, how does gender essentialism differ for both men and women?
So that's a great question. I read an article called Gendered Religiosity by Landon Schnabel, where he did a study on what gender essentialism is linked to more, gender expression or gender in-group pride, which is either, actually that's pretty self-explanatory.
What about in-group pride?
So basically, like
asking for a friend, what does in-group pride mean? Does that mean like when I'm with a group of cis women, I'm going to be like, yeah,
it's more like if you're like you are in a group,
right?
Like a conceptual group of women,
right?
And it's like all women. You are part of the class of women, and you are like proud to be a woman. Like you have pride in being a woman.
Oh, so I see.
So he did a study on whether religiosity was more linked to gender expression or gender in-group pride in either men or women. And he found that there was, in general, and this had been seen in other studies, that women tend to be more religious and that feminine traits were positively linked to religiosity and more positive views of Christianity. And that there was, he said, there may be a link between men's in-group pride and gender essentialism, while there's a link between women's religiosity and gender essentialism or religion. So women tended to be women who had higher levels of gender, like very feminine gender expression, were more likely to be religious, and men who were more like proud to be a man were more likely to be religious. So he concluded that stronger religious ties had stronger gender ties in general. So for both men and women, the more connected they were to their gender, either because of in-group pride or because of like a strong connection to like expressing themselves as a woman, they were more likely to be religious.
I feel like in a really sad way that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because any organized religion, whether it's Catholicism or not, relies on the people practicing it to be compliant.
Yes.
Right? And like not question what's being told. And at first when you said that, like, because you led with women who identify as very feminine tend to be more religious, I was like, wait, no, like there's no way. And I think that was just me living through my experience because I'm very feminine.
Yes.
Like very, very feminine. And I am not religious in the slightest.
Yeah.
Like maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, but not to my core. Like I don't actually fully believe it because of how much I see that it specifically hurts women.
Yes.
So that's really concerning.
And that was
to hear that.
Tied to gender essentialism because there's more gender essentialism in religious spaces, specifically Catholic and Christian spaces. And this was about Christian participants.
It also feels like the church's like methods of control. Like I think of like Catholic guilt, Catholic shame that people
in
have.
Like the really extreme
cases. It definitely comes from the top. Like maybe people in your church that you respect saying these things like the Pope, but then it's like policed by the people that also listen to that. So they see like gender deviation and they'll be like, why aren't you wearing a dress? Like I think they feel free to make comments that will police your behavior in a way that it still aligns under the church so that your status is protected. Like if your family goes to church, I feel like they're like, oh, you can't wear that. Yeah. People at church will say things. Like,
definitely.
And they're always worried about what the community will think.
And there's a wide range of different schools of theology and different churches and what they believe and practice. So it feels important to mention that this is about the like really weird gender essentialist churches and not the little minority of churches that are like nice to their people.
Right. It doesn't, it's not an absolute for everyone who's a practicing
Christian
blank,
person.
whatever.
Yeah.
But the trend is concerning.
The trend of this happening in like Western religions is so crazy.
Very embedded.
Yes. Yeah. And it affects everyone.
Well, like you said, they're starting with kids.
Religious. Yeah.
Right? And like what Emma was saying, it's that community. When you said like, oh, you're not wearing a dress, that brought up so many like visceral memories.
Yeah.
Not for me, but like for my siblings and like people that I grew up with in my family. It's so damaging.
Yeah.
And it's so controlling in the creepiest way possible, because now that I'm an adult and looking back, I would never do that to a child in my life.
Yeah. Like it's insane.
It's like I think it's the idea of people being very like blind to the harm of it, because it's like it's not even something someone says deliberately to enforce something. It is like entirely offhanded, and like it's a reactionary thing for people to say.
Gut reaction.
Yeah, right? Like they're not even thinking about it. It's like, this is proper, like I uphold it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I also remember when we did the history of magic episode, when we were like what is a wizard, and like then learning about like how much there was like that very patriarchal dynamic between like magic within men and magic within women, and like how the church played a really big role in the criticism of women plus the concept of magic or any sort of advanced knowledge that was like
threatening.
Yeah. And like that's where, because I was also wondering too, it's like, where do we create this idea of magic? And a lot of it is just like, if someone can do something that you can't quite explain, or they have like extreme proficiency in, people call it magic.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it, which is really cool. But seeing how that gendered line was drawn so aggressively the moment it came up was crazy, in like a much broader historical view.
Connotation of like a female witch, evil magic.
Yeah.
Wizard, cool magic. Like when men do it, it's sick. When women do it, they need to be burned.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Which also is related to mistranslations of Genesis.
Nice.
It all really back to that, doesn't it?
Goes back to the mistranslation of Genesis. And Pope John Paul II and one other guy.
Was he the one who like people tried to assassinate? Because there was like
I don't know,
relatively recent pope that there was like the attempted assassination.
But there was Pope.
Which Pope
inducted in 2006? I think there a middle one. Like
there was a middle one.
He was.
Yeah.
He was shot and seriously wounded.
In
St. Peter's Square by Turkish assailant Mehmet Ali Aja.
Now that we have all of the facts laid out on the table, I have a few questions for our lovely practicing lesbians. Because if you can't tell, we had very different upbringings, I think, and like different experiences in our quote unquote coming of age.
Yeah.
So we've heard a lot from me and maybe a little bit from Brendan, but I'm curious how your gender expression evolved throughout your coming of age, because Emma kind of touched on it with like the colors story, and it seems like it's like you try a few things until you find something that like really fits. But I just want to ask what that experience was like, because that's not something that I've gone through.
I grew up Christian. My parents took me to church every Sunday, and I was a tomboy as a child, and I dressed in my brother's hand-me-downs. I had a little bowl cut. It was actually really cute. And then as I grew up going to church and could like understand things around me cognitively, I like at some point I got a grasp on like, oh, girls are feminine, boys are masculine. My parents tell me I'm a girl, so therefore I need to be feminine. So I grew out my hair from my atrocious bowl cut. It looked a lot like yours.
Cute. Shout out.
Bowl cut gang. And then I just kept being feminine until like 9th grade, and I had a pixie cut, and it was perhaps the ugliest thing that I have ever done with my hair.
But did you feel
Very
alive
2014.
in doing it? Like, I don't know. As a change up, you know?
I felt very alive the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second and third times that I got it cut, it looked so bad because the stylist who did exactly what I asked for, she did exactly what I asked for. And what I asked for was very, very taken in on the sides and very, very swooped over my face. And it was very 2014, like you said. So I was like, maybe I like being in 9th grade. And then I was like, oh, I look ugly with short hair. So I grew my hair out. And then I again was very feminine, like very hyper feminine.
Because when I met you,
I was
you were very feminine.
Yes. I had hair literally down to my ass for a couple years. And then during the lockdown, I had time to think. I had time to ponder. And I was like, you know what? I don't like having long hair. And I didn't like the maintenance of it. That was one thing. But I was like, I don't know what style I'd want to get cut to. And I started considering that I did not like being feminine. And I was like, oh, maybe I should cut it to like a short masculine style. And so I did. And then I kept cutting it shorter. And now I have, well, it's not a pixie cut because it's not ugly like it was in 9th grade. Not that all pixie cuts are ugly.
But you have short hair.
Many of them. Yeah, I have short hair.
More or less.
More or less, I have short hair. I have very short hair. Yeah.
That's interesting that you're grounding it in hair.
Yeah, because I think that was a lot of what, and maybe I'm grounding it in hair because hair is what has determined my femininity for me for a lot of the time, is like how feminine my hair made me feel because I have so much of it. And like, it was like a very like, my mom would like use it as like a way to, like, she loves my hair. And so she would kind of ground a lot of my femininity in it. And like the length of my hair would determine it sometimes. So
I feel like that's, and not to speak on your experience, but it's because that's the only part of you that was actually truly quote unquote feminine. And so if it's your mom or whoever in your life can look at you with long hair and say, that is a woman.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a lot of it. And I do just like my hair. I think I have nice hair, whatever. That's not the point of this. The point is to say that a lot of femininity felt like an act that I was like performing, and like all of gender is a performance.
I was going to say, dare I say gender is a performance?
Yes, all of it is. Yes. Really, truly all of it. But like, especially that was like,
it feels extra. Like you're wearing a costume.
Yeah.
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 And I want to say that I think that it does take time to work up to like getting a short haircut. Like, pixie cut is one thing, but it's like, you see it and you think femininity, but like, making that choice to be like purposely masculine presenting changes you into a whole other area of like gender presentation and how people perceive you. Like, you can't just suddenly one day wake up and be like, I'm ready to change everything about how society perceives me.
When I had a pixie cut, it was still feminine enough that people would like assume femininity about me and not assume that I was gay. I came out at 14, by the way, which was in 8th grade. And now that I present in a very masculine way, like on purpose, like people immediately assume that I'm gay, which is like, I mean, it's true. I'm a practicing lesbian, so like they're right.
Actively in practice.
Yeah.
Certified.
Yeah.
Board certified.
I have a card. I'm card. Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, and I came out as non-binary around the time that I cut all my hair off, because that was like the climax of it, of my
the last level.
Yeah, that was the final boss, if you will.
Yeah.
Was getting a short haircut.
Right.
And wearing men's clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I can speak to my experience now. It's very similar. Like, I feel like I was such a little tomboy, and like I grew up, I mean, as an older sister though, I think that defined my gender a lot, and like it didn't really fully evolve until I like left home and wasn't in that like assigned babysitter position at birth. Like, Because I grew up, my brother's 3 years younger, and my twin cousins who lived just like a mile away were 3 months apart from my brother. So I pretty much just like grew up always babysitting them. And like I wasn't like, in my mind, I saw myself as like a caretaker. Like I started babysitting for money at like 13 or something.
Entrepreneur.
Just very young. Yeah, I'm like always left alone with my brother while my parents are at work. And I'm like, okay, my gender is based in that femininity side of like taking care of people. That's where I find my place. And then as I leave, like as I grow up, I figure out, oh, I have a crush on my friend, I'm bisexual. I start dressing a lot more masculine. Like I think it aligned with like being depressed in high school where I'm like, oh, I shop at Hot Topic now. I'm wearing all black. Like the idea of gender that I had maybe in 6th grade, which was like the classic Justice t-shirts that are tie-dye, the peace sign.
We've all been there.
Yeah, like we all get through that phase. And I was like, yes, I am like...
Some of us never leave.
Yeah. I feel like that peace sign
That's really
t-shirt,
beautiful.
like you're just like, you have a liberal mom and you're like, go feminism. Go Barack Obama. Like I know where I'm at in life. I am a feminist woman. I support rights. Like that's where I'm at. I'm at my like pre-large ally phase. And then I'm 15, gay marriage is legalized. I'm sobbing, like watching on TV. And I'm like, I am like crying so much. Like, yeah, I'm wearing all black. Yeah, I'm entering a phase of depression. I shop at Hot Topic. I'm not going to question any of that, but I am crying. And that Macklemore song, what was that one about?
Same love?
Yeah, I would like same love. I'd like listen. I would like have my
Local
main character
legend.
moment. My parents, my dad's dropped me off at school. I'm like looking out the window. I'm like one tear. Oh my god, gay people have it so hard. They just want to love.
Stand up for them.
Yeah, and I'm like in my ally phase. So yeah, I feel like gender has just evolved to the like once I figured out that I was queer. Like I was like, wait, okay, the idea of my mind and gender and why I felt like it never fit was correct. Like all this questioning I had where I like had to argue with my mom to not wear a dress to like fancy outings or something, like made sense. Why I was like starting to just wear men's clothes made sense. And then once I came out as a lesbian, I was like, wow, I have no tie to femininity that like is familiar. Like, I feel like that took a while for me to be like, oh, I think I am non-binary. Like, my idea of femininity does just not align with what I feel like it should. Because I didn't realize women were, like, proud to be women. Like, that makes so much sense hearing you say it. Like, you feel strong in your gender, which I feel now. But, like, at that time, I was just, like, ashamed of my body. Clothes just never fit right. Like, just, like, this just, I feel like I'm, like, yeah, putting on an act. Like, I'm just plain woman during the day. Then I go home, I'm just in my PJs, and I'm, like, finally genderless blob just laying in my bed. Like, it took time to be like, wow, that just doesn't fit me for a reason. Something's not wrong with me. But, yeah. And then I moved to college. I finally just live out my lesbian life, wearing my men's clothes.
You started practicing.
That's when I officially joined lesbianism, subscribed to the newsletter. I took the 101, the lesbian 101. Yeah. And yeah, I feel like it's just made me feel comfortable in myself that I didn't know was possible. Like my idea of gender transforming made me love myself. So thanks, lesbianism. Because I honestly would define my gender sometimes as lesbian.
Yeah, me too.
Like it's just outside of everything in my mind.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Can I Tell You Something podcast. I had a ball.
I had a blast.
Me as well.
I would say me too.
Indubitably.
So, I hope you out there liked it.
I think interesting things were talked about, and it's kind of cool to listen in to other people have a little conversation.
I would agree.
That's why I listen to podcasts.
If you want more of this, I'm going to link a poll down below. Do you want to see
more homosexual encounters?
Yes or no?
The homosexual encounters being Sarah and Emma.
Right. Let us know in the comments. Let us know wherever you see us.
If you would like to follow us on TikTok and Instagram, we are at Can I Tell You SMTH Podcast. That is Can I Tell You SMTH Podcast.
Can I tell you something? Be gay.
Sure.
Question things. Think about gender. It can't hurt. Just say
The
it.
worst that happens is
You find out you're straight.
yeah.
Yeah. That's the absolute worst scenario.
And what? You leave with some more empathy for gender diverse people or like non-binary people?
Yeah.
Like, great. We love that.
Thank
you guys for having us to
thank you for having us.
about
It was so fun.
Yeah, lesbianism. Gay people. We love talking about that. We're fruity.
Bye.
Bye.